Hello and welcome everybody to the first live stream of our Future 101 podcast. If you're new to the channel, my name is Andre, and I am blessed with the presence of my favorite co-host, Ms.
Thanks.
Brown. So today we are going to talk about the travel restrictions that have been lifted. This has been implemented on June 20th, this Monday. So just a few days later, we're going to be talking about the implications of that, what it means for us as citizens, and has anything really changed?
We will find out.
That's what we're going to talk about. But first, before we jump into the topic, we recognize that many of you who are watching, you may be brand new to the channel and you're brand new to the hosts of this show. So we're
Welcome.
gonna welcome and we're gonna introduce ourselves. So if you do have any questions right off the bat about us or about the channel or the content that we're producing, you're welcome to comment in the chats.
Yeah, we're going to try to keep an eye on those.
Miss Brown is going to be uh, taking a look at that. So we are recently graduate students. My name is Andre. This is Bethany Brown. And I graduated from the University of York in 2021, so last year. I did not experience, the mandates as Bethany did because she graduated from the University of Ottawa
Yep, just 2 weeks ago.
just a couple of weeks ago. So why don't you go quickly through, what it was like studying during the mandate era?
Well, a little bit crazy. And if you want to know more about my experiences as a student and facing discrimination because of the vaccination policies and mask mandates on campus, we do have a student stories section on our YouTube channel. You can also find the videos on our Facebook account. And I talk about, what it's like to be a student, and some interesting situations that I had with a professor. Yeah, there were a lot of, I'd say, inconsistencies in my experience. U Ottawa was not actually as strict as some other schools have been, so I was able to get away with a lot.
Well, you graduated.
I did. I graduated. I call that a success. Okay, I managed to graduate, and I did actually attend classes in person.
Yeah.
Wow, without disclosing my vaccination status.
Who would have thought?
It is possible. It's just you just got to take risks. And I mean, like, calculate the risks. It's
Yeah.
maybe not for everybody, but I think a lot more people could have taken a lot more risks than they did.
Well, imagine if we just had our students that were part of the universities and were actual paying students that were going there. Instead of switching to online classes, they
Yeah.
just said, "Oh no, I'm staying in
Yeah,
in
it's so
person."
much better quality getting in-person learning. I mean, as much as our education system is kind of
Yeah.
falling apart a little bit, um, yeah, go in person. It's better than online.
Well, obviously.
Obviously, yeah.
But I mean, so it's incredible the story that you went through, and we do have the student story. It's about a particular story that you faced with a professor who was extremely nasty to you. So
Yeah.
we encourage you to check that out. Um, before you, but I mean, of course, don't click off now to check it out. It's an interesting
Yes,
story,
check that
but
afterwards.
check that out
Go visit
after
our
the stream.
content. Yeah.
And so let's first. I'm first going to talk a little bit about my story because it is relevant to today's
It is,
article.
yes. You can
And
also watch Andre's student story.
yes, I do have a student story. Mine was the first student story that we've done with Concerned Students of Ontario. And my student story happens to take place at the airport, which is
Yes.
something that we're going to talk about today. And how difficult it is to come back home as a Canadian citizen, and how unwelcoming the public health officers are, and everybody at the airport, really. So you can check that out. I essentially refuse to do all the requirements that are needed for unvaccinated travelers to come back. I did come back last year in November, late November. So this was during, the crazy times that
That
we've
would be
had.
just after the vaccination mandate for travel
Yeah.
had been implemented. And now, how many months later is this? Seven-ish months later? 8?
Yes. 7 months, about 7 months.
Yeah.
So since I filed, okay, I got 3 tickets that were worth $5,000 each plus the tax. which is interesting because I don't know how the fuck are you taxing something that you're just getting a full payoff. But anyway, so I did receive the tickets. I took the tickets, but nobody followed up with me. So the rumors that you hear about that are true. I am a living example of it.
Yes.
So we'll keep you updated on that story as well. Now, what else? Should we talk a little bit more about ourselves?
Well, I mean, we're graduated students. This is kind of what we're doing with the next step of our lives, is focusing on this
Yes.
podcast. We've got some other cool stuff in the works.
Well, the main thing here is that the reason that we're doing this podcast and the reason that we have this channel running after graduation is because we see a lot of problems in our society. We're here to observe that and to comment on it, to bring some sanity
Let's
to
bring
this
back
crazy
critical
world.
thought and personal responsibility. Those are our goals here. Yeah, so we're branching out a bit. We're not focusing just on students anymore. We'll continue to highlight them with student stories as those become available, and we do have one coming up in the next few weeks. But yeah, we're gonna keep an eye on things politically, keep an eye on the COVID stuff, but we'll also branch out a bit. So if there's any topics that you want us to discuss, let us know in the comments.
Yep.
And we will do our best to bring those up at some point. Maybe not today's video, but for future episodes.
But if you have any specific questions for Miss Brown and I, you're welcome to send those in the chat. Do we have anybody in the chat active at the moment?
We have no new comments. We have seen some of the comments that you've already left on our advertising for this live stream, and so we will address some of those. We've seen some people have had questions about what our take is on this, and we do understand that the policies are not actually lifted. We will get into that. Trust me, that is the point. That is the point
People
of
didn't
today's.
get the memo of our sarcasm in the video
We're a
that we
little bit
posted.
sarcastic, but we are going to talk about the reality of the implications of what
Yes.
has been changed and what has not been changed. So we will get into that. We will address your
Absolutely.
concerns.
So are we good to get going with the articles that we have to present?
We have some fun topics that we're going to address first. Some interesting headlines that came up over the past couple
Yes.
days.
Well, this first one, I'm going to read this first one. A 66-year-old British man turned away from donating blood over refusal to say he isn't pregnant.
That's kind of self-explanatory, right? Like, men can't get pregnant. Why are we asking this? Why does he need to answer that question? And why is he getting turned away for not answering it?
I don't know if this is like funny or... But this is the Rebel News article, and they mentioned that this happened in Scotland, and it seems to be like this man, Leslie Sinclair.
He donated a lot of blood. Like, this
He's-
is not the first time.
Yes, he's donated 125 pints of blood.
That's a lot. But yeah,
over last 5 decades. So I mean, they did not ask these questions before that time.
yeah, it's new, and you can read the article. It talks about changes in the language about questions that have to be asked for certain procedures, and it's the change from asking women these questions to asking individuals these questions, and making it more.
I mean, we're hearing all these.
all-encompassing.
We're hearing all these ads. Like I hear this on the radio as I'm driving. I hear all these ads about like donate blood. Like we have a shortage of blood. You come on, donate blood. But they're like, I know this is in Canada and this happened in Scotland,
Yeah.
but I mean, I can't imagine that Scotland specifically has just so many blood donations that they can just reject people for something so trivial like this.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, these doctors know. Like,
Yeah.
come on now.
That is a whole, we could really get into that topic, but maybe another time. So let us know if that's something that you want to hear about.
Yeah. So that's something interesting.
Yep. There's another interesting headline that came up.
Yeah. So give me a moment. Let me just
Yep.
pull that up.
Our MPs. This is just kind of a statement of how weak our society has become. It's kind of sad. It's a bit laughable.
Well, this is the more funny one. Actually, I don't know. I don't know which one's more funny. You guys gotta decide on that.
Yeah, so let us know which one you think is more ridiculous. There we
Okay,
go. Here's
there
their
it is.
article. MPs get panic buttons to boost security after Marco Mendicino reveals he received death threats on Instagram.
Marco
Um,
Medicino.
Medicino. Sorry,
Mendusino?
I don't.
God. You butchered that name like crazy.
I'm so sorry. I need to work on my languages.
Get to know your MPs, guys.
Yes, that too. We are, yeah, we're a little bit new to politics, so bear with us.
We are
But
new, but we know a lot more than the average citizen.
yes, but it's important. It is important to be involved in politics as a young Canadian, a young person anywhere, any country. Just like know what's happening, be responsible,
It is your
think
duty as a
critically.
citizen at the end of the
Yes,
day. So
please know what's going on. But anyways, this is just like ridiculous. I also heard on the radio the other day. They said that the reason for these panic buttons is primarily because female MPs and racialized MPs have been receiving death threats. But this guy is not female, and he's white. He's not of a racialized community. So
well, that's yeah.
but
It would have
this is
been.
kind of the like élément déclencheur. This is like the thing that set it off.
Wait, what? Explain
Sorry, I
that.
just like some French expressions better than English ones. It's the thing that set it off. It's like he got a death threat on Instagram.
Yeah, and that's the reason that he gets his panic button. I
Yes,
get it.
they're all getting panic buttons.
Oh, they're all
All the
getting.
MPs.
Yeah. MPs.
Yes, all of them.
It's not just Marco Medicino.
No, it's not just him. It's everybody. They're all getting these panic buttons to boost security. This is just that's an interesting state of society that our MPs feel so unsafe because of the bills that they're introducing in Parliament. Okay, maybe you should have a better relationship with your constituents. Listen to them, actually have a relationship with them, and then maybe, just maybe, you wouldn't be getting death threats for like ignoring them. I mean, we see this all the time. A reporter will walk down the street and they'll be following an MP and asking a question about something that just happened in Parliament, and they refuse to answer.
Yeah.
Could we get some open communication? It might improve the situation a little bit.
It might improve your relationship with your constituents.
Yes.
And that's
then
important.
We wouldn't need the panic buttons because you wouldn't be
In panic.
Yeah. Your safety would not be threatened. I mean, that's not good. Like, please don't send death threats to your MPs. Be nice to them, but there needs to be like a balance. There needs to be people.
No, but it just shows how pathetic our society is these days.
It's a really
like
sad state.
like we were talking about this before, and it's like just over 100 years ago, maybe even less. Like politicians used to duel each other.
Oh yeah.
Oh, like what happened now? They get panic buttons. Are you serious?
Yes.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. But that's the state of the world that we're in right now, and this was over the death threats that were sent. It looks like it was over the gun control bills that the Parliament has introduced.
Happy about that.
Yeah, so it was the one that we discussed, and it's something that we're going to be discussing further on in the future as well. So stay tuned for that.
Yes. All right. Do you want to get into today's topic?
Let's get into today's topic. And today's topic
Travel.
we are gonna get into starting with a video first, and this video is from Global News that kind of summarizes everything that's been going on. But essentially, what we're talking about is the announcement that was made, and it has been implemented on June 20th, on Monday, where the travel restrictions for the unvaccinated Canadians has been lifted on outbound flights, so you
And
can leave the
domestic
country,
ones.
and domestic ones.
And trains.
However, there's lots of things that haven't been changed.
Yep.
And so we're gonna watch this video from Global News first, just to introduce.
Starting today, unvaccinated Canadians can board a plane or train, something they haven't been allowed to do since October of last year.
I have some unvaccinated family members that are really excited.
Vaccination requirements are also being lifted for
sounds
federally
so
regulated
excited.
transportation workers. That mandate also won't be put in place in all federally regulated workplaces.
I think it's great that everyone can travel now.
But when it comes to how this will impact the long lines and frustrating delays at Canada's busiest airports, experts say don't expect to see a change.
There's 6 or 7 million unvaccinated Canadians in this category. And if, the same percentage of them decide to travel as the rest of the population, it's going to lead to more congestion at the airport.
The changes come as COVID-19 restrictions continue to ease, but there are a number that remain in place. You still have to wear a mask on planes and trains in Canada. The ArriveCan app is still in effect for fully vaccinated and unvaccinated travelers. Unvaccinated Canadians still have to test and quarantine upon arrival to Canada. And if you're going on a cruise, you still have to be fully vaccinated. Foreign nationals who are not fully vaccinated are still prohibited entry into Canada. As for the delays, the feds say among the things needed is more staff. And when it comes to calls from business groups and mayors of border towns to scrap the ArriveCan app, the transportation minister says that's not in the immediate plan.
If they could get rid of that ArriveCan app, that would certainly help tourism.
Until then, that means more frustration as we enter the busy summer travel season.
Went for boarding. While we were there waiting to board, they're telling us, okay, we have to wait a minute again. It was so frustrating.
As for unvaccinated travelers now able to board planes and trains, some say it's about time.
Well, I think eventually everything has to catch up and get back to normal.
Now, earlier this month, the federal government dropped random mandatory testing of vaccinated travelers arriving back on Canadian soil. And while a lot of these restrictions are slowly lifting, the federal government says it's looking at the key factors right now, looking at vaccinations. But if the COVID-19 situation across Canada changes, some of those restrictions could be put back into place.
So there you have it.
There we go.
They are not necessarily gone forever. In fact, there's really only one thing that has actually changed, and I think we need to define what travel is.
Okay, let's get into that.
Okay. Typically, when you travel, you go somewhere, you have your vacation or your work meetings or whatever it is that you're doing, and then you come home. Okay, so there's two parts. I mean, unless you're just moving there, but that's different. Okay, this is travel. This is not
tourism,
this is not
travel.
Immigration. We are talking travel. Go there, come back. The only change that has actually been made in the travel restrictions is that you now no longer have to provide proof of vaccination to leave.
Yeah.
But nothing else changes. You still have to, when you come back, you still either need your proof of vaccination or you're expected to test. I think before you come back, and then on day 8 of being back, and then I think also like day 14, and you are supposed to quarantine also for 14 days. So, maybe the quarantine hotels are going to make a comeback.
That's specifically for the unvaccinated travelers.
Yes.
I think the vaccinated travelers have the free reign to
they don't have to quarantine.
They don't have to quarantine.
Yeah.
This lady just mentioned that the random testing was also lifted.
Yeah, but that's only suspended until July 1st.
Okay, so
that's
another
just
thing.
Like, we're gonna make it a little bit easier. We're gonna take away one other nuisance restriction, and just for the next, that's like not even 2 weeks.
So what changed was you can leave as an unvaccinated traveler without providing proof of vaccination.
Yeah.
Cool. But when you're coming back, you're still facing all the same trouble as you would
hasn't changed
normally.
at all. And we got a question about this. Someone asked about their son who is unvaccinated coming back to the country. Will he be let in? According to a CBC article that I was reading earlier, unvaccinated Canadians have always been allowed to return to Canada.
Yeah.
Yes, but here's the thing. Where are you willing to either take a risk or compromise? Because they're still going to ask you to wear a mask on your flight. They are still going to ask you for a test. They're still going to ask you to have the ArriveCan app, which, is disclosing personal medical information and your quarantine plans, which, have to be adequate and meet their standards, whatever that means. And then you have to quarantine. So, or you risk getting up to a $5,000 fine, or 3 of them, plus tax. Or criminal prosecution, maybe?
Well, that's what was mentioned, but that's what's mentioned. It's never been implemented.
I don't think that's going to happen, but don't take that as absolute fact. Yeah. So are you going to compromise on those things? I would hope not. Like, typically the unvaccinated people also don't want to be wearing masks, also don't want to be testing. I think everybody has a thing against quarantining. Like, and then you've brought this up a couple of times. That means more time off of work. Yeah. So if you go somewhere on vacation for 2 weeks, you come back, now you have to quarantine for 2 weeks. it's more time off work. Like you're not gonna do that.
No,
It's
it
not worth
doesn't.
the
It doesn't make
hassle.
sense. But like, so just going back to, because I can comment on this, coming back to the country, what you're facing, yeah, you can leave, you can go and, to a place that doesn't need vaccination to travel. I mean, a lot of places still require it. If, for example, I want to go to Australia to see some kangaroos, I can't do that, even though Canada has lifted
Yes,
its requirements.
because you're required to be vaccinated to go to Australia,
Yeah.
to
So,
enter that country.
like, there's a lot of, there's a decent amount of places in the world that you still can't travel despite this change being implemented.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, okay, you're gonna go, and I'm sure that if you are unvaccinated, you have some sort of convictions about this, and maybe you refuse to wear a mask, maybe you refuse to quarantine because you don't believe that this is such a big deal. Then well, you're going to have to give those principles up, or you're going to have the choice, give those principles up, or you're going to face those fines, potentially face those fines.
Yes,
And that's going to be
potentially.
up to you to make that decision. But there's a lot more problems with this, and we're going to get into it. But something that has been going on in the news a lot is how busy the airports are, and
Yes.
the travel delays are incredible. Like, I actually had a discussion with one of my students who said that they were traveling and their flight got switched without them being notified.
Oh,
So they just missed their flight because they had no idea it was switched. So there's crazy
That's not
stuff
good.
going on. Yes. So let's take a look at another video in which they are, again, they're pulling out these experts out of
Yep.
nowhere, these travel experts. And
we love our experts so much.
and so these travel experts are going to talk about whether or not this is going to help, the travel delays that are happening. If lifting of the mandates is going to make it worse, make it better, what's going to happen? So let's take a look
Marty
at
Firestone,
that.
president of Travel Secure, joins me now to talk more about this. Marty, good to see you. So what is your reaction now? We're expecting to hear more details from the government, but vaccine mandates, from what we're hearing, essentially will end for the time being for domestic travelers.
Seems every day we wake up, another little bit of good news. So positive, I guess. Until the announcement comes out, I'm still perplexed on one point and that's that you can leave internationally, but to come back in, what's supposed to happen then? Do you have to go and sit in a 14-day quarantine because you're unvaccinated? Doesn't make a lot of sense to me, so I can't wait to hear what they're going to address at that point.
Do you think this is going to help the delays that we're seeing at the airports, reduce the lineups, make things more efficient in processing?
Okay. Domestic travel, absolutely,
Okay.
100%, both leaving and coming back. Here's the dilemma I see. Great news, restrictions lifted. Passport lines, I think, are going to get longer now because potentially there's 5 million unvaccinated individuals that may decide to travel now. So isn't that great news? Well, my passport's expired or has less than 6 months. That's going to cause bigger lines, but it's good news. We got to get it going somewhere. My concern is arriving back in Canada unvaccinated. That's going to slow lines down again because you have to show proof that you are vaccinated or that you're prepared to sit 14 days in a quarantine and give them your address and everything. So little up in the air at this point.
What is also perhaps up in the air, Marty, is, and we know that the airlines, when they were looking at lifting some restrictions, masking, et cetera, the airlines themselves maintained their own mandates. We saw that in the United States, for example, where masking was lifted, but a number of the airlines still maintain it. We know that's still maintained here in Canada, and we still have to find out whether or not that part of it will be involved in this in this announcement. But your take, do you think airlines themselves may say, well, here's what's been lifted, but here's what our rules are to ensure that all passengers are safe?
Yeah, we don't know. And having just returned myself from an international trip, it was surprising how that airline I could sit with no mask. Yet when I got to Air Canada on the airline trip home, of course, full mask from the boarding area right on. So you've got to ask and you've got to be prepared. But how they're going to handle masks is probably the next thing in line. But this one today I find most intriguing as to how they're going to handle unvaccinated individuals heading back into Canada internationally.
And there is a possibility that these mandates may have to be reinstated. It says they're keeping a close eye on the variants. So there's that. The pivot is still in the books.
Absolutely. So you've got the random testing that's on hold, a
Yeah.
hiatus till July 1st. This will also fall into line. If they see numbers coming back up again, they're just going to clamp right down. Nothing worse than a step back. It's very hard to take something back that was given to people. So let's hope it continues all in the right direction.
That announcement set to happen later on today. I know, Marty, you'll be keeping a close eye on it. Marty Firestone, president of Travel Secure, thank you for this.
Thank you for having me. Take care.
You too.
Well, thank you. Okay, let's talk about this.
Well, I mean, first of all, there you go. These are not gone forever. Sorry, this one suspension of one travel restriction is not gone forever. And they can bring it back at any time.
And they will.
They will.
And they will. That's what they say.
We're pretty convinced.
As long
yeah.
as, there's another variant, as long as the numbers go up.
Yep, or if there's another wave.
There's another wave, yes. So, I mean, if you're like, let's just think of from the point of view of a family that wants to go on vacation, because it's been a couple of years of this craziness going on. Okay, so we finally can get out, and this family's planning a vacation 2 months down the road, because you gotta talk with your employers and make sure that your employers are okay with you taking the time off. And then you have to negotiate your quarantine, because, you got to do a 14-day quarantine. And so you're going to be essentially off from work. Let's say you take a week vacation, off from work for 3 weeks. You're getting no pay for 3 weeks unless you have the ability to take the time off for that. And so at the same time, you're booking your vacation 2 months ahead. And let's say the mandates return a week right before you have to go.
Oh, man.
Like, that's the
Really
situation that people are facing.
Yes.
Because these can happen anytime. Like, they can come out next week and say, oh, sorry, the number's gone up because we opened things up, and here you go.
Exactly.
Right? So everything is so up in the air, and that's the problem with the situation here is there's no certainty for people.
No, there isn't. We're just gonna keep perpetuating this life of uncertainty that we've been living for the past 2 years. It's really unhealthy.
Yeah. And he's saying that, oh, it's a step in the right direction. Maybe. And we don't want to take, one step forward, 2 steps back sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that way you're never going to move on from this.
No. How are you supposed to? Can we just go back to normal, please? I was talking to my roommate like months ago, and she was like, the one thing they haven't tried is just stopping all of the restrictions, going back to normal life, and seeing what happens. And if it doesn't work, then maybe some of the mandates would actually be justified. But because we haven't tried that, you have nothing to compare and say that these actually work.
Right, but then the problem comes, how do you classify if something works or doesn't?
Well,
because as we can see, we're going to see later on how Trudeau mentions this, is that, people are dying from COVID every day still.
Mm-hmm.
And they probably will continue for the rest of time. So are we always going to justify the emergency that way? Or are we going to change our perspective of what an emergency is?
I think we should go with that. Yes.
And I think most people who are watching the stream would agree with that statement.
Yep.
So now, the most important thing that I believe is happening here is that the reason why this got such big headlines, although not many things really changed.
Yeah, this is like such a non-announcement, actually.
Yeah.
It's like ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a big non-announcement for people. So it's like not many things have really changed, but they made a huge fuss about it in the news,
Why
in the
was
media.
that, I wonder?
And so the question is always why, as skeptical individuals, as good citizens, we're going to ask, what's going on? Why is that happening? And
around the same time as that announcement was made, Bill C-11 was going through its second reading in Parliament.
And it passed without debate.
It did. Yep, it just did.
Yeah.
So Bill C-11 is...
Let's give a quick background on Bill C-11 and why it's important, and why was there a distraction created for it.
Mm-hmm.
So just a quick gist of Bill C-11. Bill C-11 is essentially a bill that gives the government the ability to somewhat regulate what you're seeing as online content, and they're going to provide it as online, Canadian culture-friendly content.
Yeah,
so
which sounds like a good thing.
Yeah, it sounds great. I mean, all of these amendments that they're making sounds amazing. It's trying to, for safety, security,
We're
all
Canadian
of this.
content.
We're Canadian content,
This
so
should
we might
benefit
even
us,
benefit
right?
us, right? But I mean, if you have right-wing American content or whatever American content you're watching, then it's going to be a little bit harder to find it because the government will be regulating that.
Yeah, and they'll be promoting the Canadian stuff over anything else.
Yeah. And so they're going to simply decide whether this content is deemed Canadian enough or not. And
Yes.
who gets to decide that? And that's in the hands of the people who are making these amendments,
Yes.
which is a huge issue. And so there is a huge pushback weeks ago about C11, and a lot of YouTubers have been talking about this because it is essentially going to affect them and their viewership. And so now that we are talking so much about this travel plans and how these travel are restrictions are being lifted, and they made a huge fuss about it, at that same time, Bill C11 passed its second reading in Parliament, which
Very
is
quietly.
very
No one
quietly.
paying any
No,
attention.
there was a little announcement, but nobody made
Yeah.
it a big deal. And that's how things went. So we're bringing attention to this because that's a really important topic here. So we have some questions and some comments to address. We might as well give it a little
Or
pause.
just before we get into that, I just want to say too that like it's not that the fact that Bill C11 is being covered up that is the thing we have an issue with. It's like it's the fact that our government is actually trying to distract us from things.
Yeah.
It's like whether Bill C11 is a good thing or a bad thing is not the point. Why are they trying to distract us? Why are they trying to divert our attention from something? That is the big concern that I have.
Yeah.
And that's just something that we're going to have to try to keep an eye out for.
Yeah. Well, that's scary because I mean, it's clear that the average Canadian has put so much trust in the government. At the same time, the government is kind of hiding things. You know, like when a person's hiding something, like, and they just like really don't want to show it to you. Like, there's something going on there.
There's something. It's probably not a good thing.
It's probably not a good thing. If it was a great thing, they would just show it off and be
Yes,
proud of it.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Why
Like
is our
they're-
government not proud of what they're doing supposedly for our benefit?
Yeah, they're proud of all these gun restrictions that they're making, right? They're proud of all these restrictions that they're doing for COVID. Why are
Yes.
they not proud of C11?
Yeah,
That's a good question. That's something to think about.
it definitely is. Yeah. All right, time for some comments, and then we'll come back to our topic. So,
Well, okay, so we're going to address this comment after we discuss this because this comment it pertains to the university. So we're going to get to that in a moment.
okay.
Let's talk about another type of distraction that's going on here.
Yes. Oh, okay. This one's interesting. I like this. Let's
Let's
actually
finish this
terrible.
topic
It's
and then we're
actually
going to address
terrible,
the question.
but-
Yeah.
Mhm. All right. We have. Do you want to show this article?
Oh, about the vaccination with the kids?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm
All
going
right.
to pull that up.
So.
But just lay the foundation for this.
Yep. So shortly after the travel restriction mandates were suspended, or just that one, that now you can get on a plane without being vaccinated or get on a train without being vaccinated. Oh, and also I'm just going to throw it there too. Nothing changed for cruise ships, so you still have to be totally vaccinated to get on a cruise ship, even though we've seen multiple COVID-19 outbreaks on fully vaccinated ships. So, the vaccination's really
Makes a lot of
working.
sense.
It's totally doing its job. So we've got to keep it there because it's obviously working. But anyways, we have this article.
So the article is Canada expected to finish review of first COVID-19 shot for youngest kids in weeks. So in a couple of weeks, we're going to have,
Yes.
they're going to review these new shots for kids. And I'm assuming this is kids under 5.
Yeah, so 6 months.
6 months to
old.
5 years
Yes.
old.
So it's interesting timing because this came out
Friday,
a couple
June,
days.
June 17th.
Yes, a couple days after they made the announcement that they were going to suspend this one restriction. So now, and kids under the age of 12 years didn't have to be vaccinated to get on a plane to travel with, if their parents are vaccinated or whatever. That was not a requirement. So why now that no one has to be vaccinated to leave the country are we approving the shots for the younger kids who didn't even need it in the first place? Well, it's planting the seed, and now there's no pressure for you to get your kids vaccinated because, we're seeing things being lifted in society within our country, within the province, I mean, depending on the place that you go, there are still some, restaurants or businesses that say, vaccinated, come on in, which is just great.
Well, but this goes along with the whole travel thing as well. And the kids will be returning back to school. They're starting their summer time right now, but they're
Yes.
returning back to school in the fall.
So you've got time. There's no rush to get your kids vaccinated, but now you can. And so that just might be it's not an obvious push to get the kids vaccinated.
Not yet.
But the door is open. The possibility is now there. And I figure a lot of people are just going to be like, well, might as well do it now so that they are ready for the coming months.
Yeah.
Because
so we don't have to stress about it.
exactly. Then there's no rush. Then it's like your kid doesn't get, they'll have to not participate in what activities they're doing until they do get the shots. If the mandates come back in the fall. But here's the thing I want to say to the viewers who are listening to this and might be considering that option. It's like, and if you are only getting the vaccination for the purposes of not being able to do things, in my opinion, that is the wrong reason to get it. But I mean, it's your life and you decide for what you want to do. But at the same time, it's like, here's how the government works. And this is something that I found out, speaking with Randy Hillier's chief of staff, and when we went over to do the interview, is that essentially the government is going to see how many people are going to take the shot willingly. Well, they did that with the booster shot, right?
Yeah. So they're going to see that. They're going to get a response from people. Okay, well, 50% took it. And as long as a certain percentage takes it, the rest will be mandated to take it. And so if you don't want things to be pushed, if you don't want things to be mandated or come into place to be forced on your children for, I don't know, requirement to go to different places, then you simply
do it willingly
don't do it.
Yeah.
If you don't think that your child requires it for health, don't do it. If you think your child requires it for health, then do it. And speak with your doctor. Make sure that all the risks and benefits are weighed.
Yeah. But the whole argument of like, we just have to do this to get back to normal. Okay, let me ask you, is this one travel restriction being suspended normal? Is life normal again? You tell me. Let us know in the comments.
Well, that's the thing is, are we getting closer to normal? Because a lot of people might think that things are opening up. I don't have to wear a mask anymore in most public places. I don't
Although
need...
they are strongly recommended.
Strongly recommended.
And always welcome.
But it's like, okay, well, these things are being lifted, but are we actually getting to a good point in our society? Because the reality is there is, more and more things that are going to be coming up in the fall. And that's what's happening, is the continuous cycle of, things being opened up. And especially during election time, we have another one coming up with the municipal election. And as soon as that's over, the expectation is that the cases will go up in the winter as they always do. And predictably, the mandates will likely to go back up in the winter.
Yep. And, I think that brings us to the question that we received. It was about... here we go. Do you guys think universities will remove vaccination mandates before September?
Like McMaster?
Remove the vaccination mandates. So they're suspended right now. They've been suspended since the end of April.
Has McMaster suspended their mandates?
Suspended. Yeah. There's very few schools that haven't. It's like Western and Seneca College are the only schools that have not actually suspended. But
yeah, so
do we think they're going to remove them?
To address this question from Violin Lover, what our opinions are, is they're going to get it removed? Well, I don't think so. I think they're going to mandate a third shot in the fall.
Yeah.
That's very unlikely that they're just going to drop everything and leave it as is. If they do, they're going to bring those back in the fall again. And that's the way they're prepping the students as well. Because like I even spoke with my friends about this, and they're one of them is at Seneca College, and he's in the nursing program, and he's saying that that they're already saying that they're going to be implementing this in the fall to take the third shot, and he doesn't want to take the third shot, but that is again something that's come up. So that is our prediction, and that's what we think.
Yep.
All right. So let's talk about
other
the vaccination
comments?
scheme here.
Can I go through some other comments first?
Okay.
First of all, thank you to all the people who are so happy and proud of us questioning our government. Thank you.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yes,
Well,
we
you
are.
have to question your
We
government.
have to. I mean, we're not allowed to anymore.
Well, we're going to
But
keep doing it regardless.
we are going to keep questioning. So please keep listening. Let us know what you want us to question too. Yes.
So what else we got on
so
the
to those
comments?
of you who have pointed out that the mandates are suspended and not lifted, we are aware. That is exactly, we totally understand.
We should call out the names of the people participating in the chat as well.
Yeah. Something about have I missed something? Travel restrictions suspended. What about for Canadians returning to Canada? The arrive can, the quarantine for the unvaxxed, the arrive can, and quarantine for visitors entering Canada. The truckers that travel alone across the border, are those mandates gone? The
Absolutely
answer is
not.
no.
Nothing has changed about arriving back in Canada.
Yep.
And
There
that's
have been
something
no
we went
changes
over at the start of the stream.
Yes. And we talked about already the son who is unvaccinated and wants to come back. Yeah, it's crazy.
We've gone through most of
I
those
think that's all
so
our
far.
comments so far, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to address the rest of the comments a little bit later on. I just wanted to bring up another point before we move on to talk about the travel industry. But another point to bring up about the reason this announcement was made and how it's going to entice more people to get vaccinated. Because if you consider a hypothetical case of, again, a family that wants to get out and finally go and do something, and you know, they see these headlines and they see, okay, yay, you know, vaccination mandates have been lifted. I can travel now. I can do whatever I need to do. They book their trip and they spend all this money and they're so excited to go. But once they actually check the requirements, they realize, well, on the way back, I have to quarantine. So I have to miss 2 weeks of work and pay. And I have to do the Arrive Can app, and I have to do the testing twice or multiple times. I don't know how many times they still have it out there. So I have to do all these requirements still. And eventually people are just going to, you know, at least a certain portion of the people who are going to be in that situation will say, oh, fuck it, I'm just going to go get vaccinated so I don't have to deal with this stuff anymore. And that's what happened to a lot of my friends personally, is they, you know, initially they didn't want to get vaccinated, they didn't want to do these things, but they eventually just kind of caved and said, oh no, that's enough for me. I'm just going to go and take a vacation, and I'm going to get vaccinated because I cannot afford another 2 weeks off from work.
Exactly.
Or I'm not going to deal with these restrictions anymore, right?
Yeah, so it's just another ploy to get more people vaccinated, which the government has been pretty open about. Like the reason that vaccination mandates exist for travel. I mean, we have almost 90% of eligible Canadians vaccinated.
First dose. I think it's like only about 82 for double dose, yeah. But 87 have one dose, something like that.
Yeah, so that's a lot of people that have complied, and yet they still implement this travel restriction of you can't travel unless you're vaccinated to get more people to take the shots.
Yeah.
They're totally transparent about that.
Yeah,
which
it's
I
not
mean
even,
kind of surprises me, but
they're not even hiding it. But you know, the citizens eat it up and they don't question the government. They say, "Oh, that's great," although it is the definition of coercion. Anyways,
nice. All right, we have some articles now. So this one, Canada to suspend vaccine mandates for domestic travel, kind of boring title. But the point is, if I scroll down to some more interesting paragraphs at the bottom here, the National Airlines Council of Canada, representing the country's two largest carriers, called the announcement an important milestone, but not enough, and asked for all vaccination requirements to be suspended permanently.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. That's nice. They're on our side. They want them gone. And there is some reasoning for that, which we'll get into in a moment, but I just want to read this next paragraph as well. In recent weeks, Toronto's Pearson Airport has had planes stuck at gates and hours-long security lines, which we saw in the video that we showed, because of staffing shortages. Last week, Canada said random testing. Oh, that'll be suspended. Yeah. To help reduce congestion. So that's why they're doing that. It's a temporary thing. It's just like, now we're letting more people travel. Let's remove this one thing to make it a little bit easier, but it's a temporary suspension.
Right.
Very, very temporary, and they've put an end date on it. So
the whole
talk
reason
about
that the National Airlines Council of Canada is looking to has asked all vaccination requirements to be suspended permanently. The only reason they've asked that is not because of private medical information and all of this. It's the reason for that is because they want to reduce the long wait times and the staffing shortages. How about getting more staff? What happened to that? How about not firing people for not disclosing their vaccination status?
And I read somewhere Trudeau wants to introduce 400 new positions in security in the airports.
That's going to solve
Meanwhile, they they put 900 staff on unpaid leave. So how about rather than create 400 new jobs, we just bring back the people that were put on unpaid leave?
Yeah.
That's across the country. That's not one airport.
And we know that we're aware that some airlines and some airports have been bringing back the workers who were on unpaid leave.
Yeah, well, because along with the timing of this travel restriction being suspended, they've also lifted the vaccine requirement for their staff.
For the workers.
So people can come back to work. That is a good thing. We support that. Please go back to work.
Absolutely. Our economy needs it, and the people need it, really.
Yeah.
People have
and
been
go back with your head
down.
held high. You've been off work for a couple months, which is horrible. I'm so sorry you've been through that, but go back.
Yeah.
Don't quit, because we've seen people doing that too. Please don't quit. Go back. You stuck through.
Yeah.
You held your convictions, and now you get to get your job back. So
be proud of that. Yes.
Yes, please.
And just going back to this announcement that you just read about the National Airlines Council of Canada and the two other videos, and just looking at the tone of things, it's like the reason they are lifting these mandates and they're letting people travel is like because we want to benefit the tourism industry, right? And the travel industry.
Yep.
But it's like they're causing all of these delays. And as we mentioned previously, you're not going to solve delays by just having more people at the airport being able to travel. And they're not addressing the fact that they have fired all these workers. Like, that's not even brought up. I can't believe that's not even a talking point on the news. Is like, oh, maybe we're having these staff shortages because we fired a shit ton of staff.
Yes, or put them on unpaid leave. They weren't necessarily fired.
Right. But it's like, I wonder what the issue is. They're kind of
why
in
does
that
it take so
attitude
much
of like,
longer to do everything?
I don't know why. It must be these restrictions that we have. Like, really? Like, why are we playing dumb here? It's like we certainly fired all these people, and it's not majority, it's a small amount, but that small amount accounts to a lot of things. Like, you've got a good portion of people who are not there at the check-in. Well, guess what? You have huge lines now because things are not running smoothly, right? And especially with the whole volume of people coming back and everybody wants to travel at the same time, it's inevitable that you're going to get these delays. But these experts are not talking about this stuff, which is incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, it is.
So let's talk about the travel industry. So you have another article here that
Hang on. I gotta get that up.
That we're going to talk about.
Yes, but along with the National Airlines Council, there is also specifically the WestJet CEO, Alexis von Hunsberg.
Come on, you're German. Come on, this is in your blood. You can do it.
Hunsberg, I think that's how you say that. Yeah, he I'll just read this quote because it's really good. But along with him, there's also the Canadian Airports Council interim president Monette Pasher, who they both have some things that they want to say about this.
These are important people in our travel industry.
They are, and it's nice to see that these people think it would actually be a good idea for all of the mandates to be gone.
Wow.
Like completely gone.
We got some patriots
we
over there.
We do. Yeah, it's really nice to see that there is that support. So let me see, where is this? Yeah, WestJet CEO calls for end to vaccine mandates as COVID-19 border restrictions extended for okay, so this was a little while ago that this was posted, and And once again, let's just see the what is the word? I don't think unreliability is a word, but
Unpredictability.
I don't think that's what I'm trying to say. No, but just like our government, you know, they said they're going to extend the travel restrictions for another month, and well, it's not June 30th, it's June 20th, so 10 days early that they decided to make adjustments to the travel restrictions. Because this was published on June 1st. So the WestJet CEO said, as vaccines are not preventing the spreading of the virus since Omicron, there is no more logic to maintain it. Thank you. This guy actually has logic.
Wow.
That's fantastic. Oh, you gotta love that. And then he said this will also relax some of the operational challenges at the airports. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got. It says we gotta use logic here.
Yes.
Alexis, you're a good man.
Yes, thank you. We like you. Where's
Well,
the
he's
other
got
thing?
a tweet in there too.
Yes.
Talking
What did he
about this.
say? Vaccine mandate for air travelers and employees needs to be dropped. Yes, we agree. As vaccines are not preventing the spread of the virus since Omicron, there's no more logic to maintain it. And this, yeah, it's the same thing that the article already stated.
Yeah.
So the whole the having lines thing, this is another thing. It's not just the staffing shortage. It's also, and this is
additionally the
this
restrictions.
is Monette Pasher talking, the interim president of the Canadian Airports Council. She says it would normally take a customs agent, when you're in front of them at their desk, about 30 seconds to process a passenger, but now it can take anywhere from 2 to 4 times that, up to 2 minutes, because they have to review health questions. You saw the lines in that video that we shared earlier. That's a lot of people.
It was like a zoo over there.
I don't know how many people like go through an airport on a daily basis, but like 30 seconds, if that's your norm for something to now be taking 2 minutes, that's a
4
huge
times.
waste
2 to
of
4
time.
times. So imagine you do that for every single person. There's thousands of people who pass through Pearson every day, and it's like thousands multiplied by 2 to 4 times. That's the increased wait time. So if on average you're going on an international flight and you got to get to the airport about 3 hours before you head out to make sure you make it onto your flight and you go through all the checkup and all the security, well, you multiply that by 2 to 4 times to be safe. That's the kind of things that we're facing here. And again, like we mentioned, it's both issues here at hand, is because you're short on staff that you cannot check in people in time, but at the same time, the people you're checking in, it takes longer because you have to go through all this personal, medical, and just private information that you're asking of people, which is already a problem in and of itself, but it's also creating all these delays.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we have some commentary from our dear Trudeau.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the stream. We got like Trudeau on here.
No, that would be very.
that would be quite disturbing if that happened, but it would be pretty funny at the same time.
Oh boy, his voice kind of creeps me out a little bit. But anyways,
at least we wouldn't be hearing it on the stream.
True, he can type in his comments, but we already have comments from him in the article that has direct quotes. So. Responding to criticism of the government's decision on Wednesday, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the measures are still necessary. Of course, he says they're still necessary. This is not surprising. The reality is, as much as people would like to pretend we're not, we're still in a pandemic. There are Canadians who die every single day because of COVID-19. Are we still in a pandemic, Andre?
I don't know. I
mean, personally, I don't think we ever actually were.
I personally, I mean, we talked about this on our previous podcast about the healthcare system and what a pandemic actually means, but the definition was changed. So technically, yeah, you could say we're in pandemic based on the definition of the World Health Organization and all this. But it's like when you're talking about a real thing that we used to think of as a pandemic way back. Have you seen the movie Contagion? It's like it came out on Netflix. Perfect timing as COVID came out. It's one of those.
I love all this timing.
Yeah, and it was like people were just dropping dead. Like you're walking on the street, just people dying.
That's not good.
And you know, like there's panic. There's people walking in hazmat suits, and like shit's bad. I have not seen that. In fact, I think, you know, we don't have the statistics here today, but I think over the time of the supposed huge waves of the pandemic, we actually had a decrease in all-cause mortality over that time. So it's kind of interesting how we're in a pandemic, but at the same time, there isn't a ginormous increase in mortality. So I don't, yeah, that's something to discuss from a scientific point of view. But it's like, yeah, it's going. The reason why Mr. Trudeau is pointing this out is because the intention is to bring these things back in the fall.
Yeah.
It's
so
to
don't
calm
you be
people
thinking
down.
that we're done here.
It's to calm people down that were, went through a rough winter, but at the same time, it is conditioning people to continue that cycle to happen. And when they say we're returning back to normal, they mean a new normal. And the new normal means, you're going to have your free time and freedom to go everywhere, maybe even travel or go to different places without a mask and all these amazing things during the summer. But as the cases start to rise, as the hysteria on television starts to continue in the fall and in the winter, we're likely going to go into more lockdowns and more restrictions, and they're going to bring those back. So the reason he's saying this is like, stay on guard, right? Stay on guard, because that is something that we're planning to bring back. He wouldn't be saying this if he was, we're moving on. We're actually getting out of this, and we're going to put this behind us. We vaccinated enough people, and people are not scared of this anymore, right? But that's not happening. That's not the tone that our prime minister is using.
Yes. And just before I read the last part of that quote, we have some comments from Jonathan. The WestJet CEO's position is still dangerous. Hypothetically, should a shot exist that demonstrates some level of effectiveness, his position justifies future implementation. The policies must be rejected, not because they don't have evidence for them, but rather, even if they have the most robust evidence imaginable, which, they don't, they are immoral. I agree. They are immoral.
If we're talking from the ethics perspective, even in a real pandemic when things are bad, it would be very, very questionable. At the same time as what's happening now, it would be very questionable to ask people for their private medical information or their information about their home, where they're going to quarantine, all of this nonsense.
Yeah, it's quite invasive when you got people coming up and like knocking on your door.
Yeah.
we've
That's
had,
bad. I can't believe we got to that place in Canada,
Yes.
but we did. And quite frankly, we are the ones who let things happen we let things get to that place.
Yeah, we are responsible.
At the same time, we are the ones responsible for fixing it and getting things back on track.
So don't lose sight of that. We can fix this. Not all hope is lost.
But I like that comment. That makes it's a good point to bring up.
Yes. Anyways, the last part of Trudeau's quote here. I know people are eager to get back to things we love, but what will also further damage our tourism industry is if we get another wave. There he is, just planting that seed again. But I do want to talk about the tourism industry. So the travel industry does look like it will be benefiting from this, right? Like more people can go to airports, more people can make use of travel agencies. So that's great for them. That's perhaps a step in the right direction for our economy. But then there's our local tourism industries, and the problem with us opening up and letting people, almost encouraging, like we're making it easier for people to leave, because like this doesn't just affect the unvaccinated, it also affects the vaccinated. Now it's one less thing you have to do when you board a plane. You don't have to show proof of a negative test or of your vaccination, so it makes things just a tiny bit easier to get out. Getting back there's no change. But in our the more local actual tourism, a lot of that is small businesses, and also that's in Canada. And so if we've got domestic travel happening, okay, maybe they're possibly benefiting from that a little bit. But we haven't made it any easier for anyone to come into the country. So we're still limiting the tourists coming into Canada because only the unvaccinated are able to enter. So we aren't driving anyone into our Canadian tourism industry. And I used to work in the tourism industry and I love it. It's wonderful. I love like heritage stuff, history, museums, like I love all of that. But I don't see them benefiting from this because there's no way for them to benefit from it. We're making it easier for people to leave the country and not making it any easier for anyone to come back and experience Canadian tourism.
Well, essentially what you're saying is, hey, Canadians, go spend money in other countries because we don't need the money here.
Yes.
And it's like, well, oh, and if internationals want to spend money here, I'm sorry, you got to be vaccinated and you got to go through all these ridiculous measures in order to come here. So who the hell is going to come here? Who wants to come? Like, I want to go and see kangaroos in Australia. I really do. I want to see a kangaroo at least once in my life. But it's like, I can't go there because I have to be vaccinated to go there. They won't even let you, right?
Yes.
And the same thing is happening in Canada. Very similar rules are here. So it's like, you're only benefiting the big companies. The same thing we've seen during lockdowns when they were benefiting Costco and Walmart, but closing down your little moms and pops shops, right? This same thing is happening with this travel restrictions being lifted, because now people are spending money on things like Sunwing and Air Transat and Air Canada and WestJet that are flying international. They're going to go to these international destinations, spend money there, and their economy is going to be booming. But we're not allowed, we are being we're restrictive towards internationals coming to this country and spending money here where it's needed the most, with especially our economy not doing so well with the prices going up every year.
Now, as much as we're talking about how the federal government is like obviously supporting these big companies and not paying attention to the smaller local businesses, I mean, it's slightly different jurisdiction because most of those businesses are going to be provincially regulated, not federally. So this isn't necessarily the federal government being evil and saying we're going to hurt our tourism industry, but, you know, boost the travel industry. It's just like, I could totally see that as just being an oversight. They didn't think about it.
Yeah, it doesn't. I wouldn't say that it's like malicious in terms of, we're gonna plan this.
It's a side effect.
Yeah, we're gonna plan this and only benefit the big companies and not the small companies. It's just, this never came across their mind.
Yeah.
Right, and it just turned out to be that way, and it turns out to be pretty evil in what they're doing.
Yeah,
but it's like,
maybe this is why we should have debate in Parliament.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe this is why there should be different sides of the story.
Yeah. An actual discussion
before things are implemented. This is why you don't want a majority government. And watch our podcast on elections, where we talk about majority governments and why it's a terrible thing that we have going on here in Ontario, because no debate is going to be happening because one party has all the say.
Yeah.
So if you do want democracy, that's not something that you wish to happen.
Yeah. Well, we actually don't have a majority government in our federal government at the moment, but we do have the collaboration with the
I meant
NDP
provincial Ontario government that got a landslide majority.
Yes.
But yeah, in the federal government, things are a little bit different. But again, not malicious intent, but the consequences that it will have is going to be not favorable for the small businesses, which is something we should be supporting, especially after such a rough time that they've had over the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, just like my experience working at a museum, the amount that we had to pivot during the start of, it wasn't the lockdown, so it was the first summer, with, you know, masks and everything. You have to sanitize everything. You can't sanitize like 200-year-old buildings.
No? Are you sure?
No, you can't. So it was an open air museum.
Not gonna Lysol that?
Yeah, so it's like we couldn't have people in the buildings. We had to completely pivot what we were doing. And I don't know, somehow that actually ended up benefiting the museum. I'm not sure how that happened. But anyways, it actually worked out well for us. But this is not gonna help.
No, absolutely not. And just going back to the same point that we're talking, well, most of these things that we're talking about is how it's not really benefiting the unvaccinated. It's not really benefiting the people who are victims of this entire thing. But at the same time, for the vaccinated folks that are looking at this and thinking, oh, things are opening up. Okay, great. But look, this isn't great for you either, because, the crazies on the left, you're going to have to deal with the crazies on the right on the same plane.
Yes, exactly. This is just more opportunity for further division in society, because now there's going to be people, and we know, if you have done your research and you've read the restrictions that are remaining, you're still required. Are you ever really? But I don't know. You're still required to wear a mask when you're on a plane or a train.
Well, they just won't board you otherwise, especially Air Canada. But it really depends on the flight and all of this.
Yes, but that's just another opportunity for more stress in the airport travel environment for the people who just want to go along with everything and have like no problems with their flight. And then you've got the people who are going to be like, well, I don't have to be vaccinated to get on the plane. Why should I have to wear a mask? And we don't agree with either end of extremism.
Yes.
Is the point.
Well, that's the point, because there is a problem with people on the right, especially the extreme. There's a problem with the people on the left. There's a problem with both. And the thing is, we cannot continue fighting against each other and only looking to the extremes and siding with one of the extremes. That's never how things are going to pan out, right? So both sides are going to be suffering from this because of the decisions that the government made without consulting their constituents and without getting the opinions of the people first, and really hearing people out. So it is going to be about people on the right not being radical, people on the left not being radical, and everybody just taking care of themselves. And this is what we speak about in terms of personal responsibility, is like, if you decide that you're not going to get vaccinated and you're not going to wear a mask, or vice versa, it's not your responsibility to take care of whatever somebody else is doing. If they're wearing a hazmat suit on the flight, which did happen before,
oh no,
like, just let them be. It's their choice to do that. It's like, yeah, we can talk about it. We can have a laugh here on the show, but at the same time, you cannot be prosecuting these people in person. Like, you got to let them be. And same thing goes for people on the left. The only way we're going to resolve our differences is if we stop caring about what other people do. Just care about what you do, and you'll be fine.
Yes.
And that goes for both sides, the left and the right.
Yes. But also care about what you do and stick to your convictions. You know, don't be doing this virtue signaling and just getting vaccinated so that you can travel. Like, do it because it's something you actually believe in.
Yeah, and a lot of these, like, a lot of these things that are implemented, and why a lot of people follow them, especially the masking, is it's virtuous. It's right, like, oh, yes, I'm being a good citizen, and we've talked about what a good citizen means, and there's a podcast about this. What it means to be a good citizen is somebody who's obedient and compliant, or is somebody who has some critical thinking and obviously knows the electoral system and all of this. So you can check that out on our channel. But when it comes to this issue right here, is that it's not okay to be discriminated against the vaccinated and vice versa for both sides.
Yes.
And so there's lots of virtue signaling with the masking, unfortunately, because people see it as a glorious thing to do. It's like, I'm taking care of others. No. Just take care of yourself. If you think you need it, wear it. If you think you don't. And that's going to lead to good things in our society.
Yes. I like that. I agree. Most definitely.
Do we have any more comments coming in?
No. No, we don't. No. Just some comments on majority government.
Okay. No Trudeau popping in all of a sudden?
No. I don't know. We don't know for a fact if Trudeau is watching this. I mean, I guess it could be.
He could be.
Like a fake account or something. I don't know. I don't know who's watching us unless you've left a comment. So, yeah. Well, we have lots of interesting stuff coming up in the next couple of weeks. Like we mentioned, a student story. Good story, different from both of ours, so that'll be interesting. We have more lives, so let us know what you want us to talk about, and we'll keep our eyes open for some interesting things happening in our society and our government. We also have interviews with Randy Hillier and his chief of staff, Dave Schostel, coming up.
Thank you, Randy and Dave, for stepping up and providing us the commentary and your thoughts on our society today.
Yes, and for promoting this live.
And of course, for promoting this live. So we really appreciate your support.
We do. And yeah, check out our channel and like and subscribe and share. Yeah,
check out the other content that we have. We have the student stories. We do have the plenty of podcasts that were released, lots of shorts, lots of interesting content, and let us know how you would like us to improve. This is our first live of our Future 101 podcast, and we really thank you all for joining us today and tuning in and providing your commentary. This is very important issues that we're discussing here. Again, my name is Andre, and this is Miss Brown. And we are going to be observing and commenting on the crazy world that we live in.
Yeah,
So,
we are.
thank you so much for joining us, and we're